Hello, everybody. The serious part of the evening is coming up. Our first speaker. So grab a seat, grab a drink, move around, come inside. Our first speaker this evening spent 20 years in the Indiana State House and was a representative with USDA on rural development. So he knows what happens in rural country, in rural counties, rural parts of the state, and what we need here. And he's currently running for Lieutenant Governor for the state of Indiana, Dr. Terry Goodin.
All right. This board may not be long enough. I have a tendency to want to walk around when I talk, and I think it's the school teacher in me. If I look over your shoulder, I promise you I'm not spying on you. I'm just checking your homework. All right? Make sure you got your homework done. Where's the young lady that was singing? She didn't walk out here, did she? Let's give a great big round of applause. That was absolutely wonderful. I get amazed by the talent we have here in Indiana, and I love to hear it when I'm out and about. So, hey, we've got a lot of folks here. I don't know if I should start introducing people or not. I'll let the host take care of that. Our state chairman's here, and we've got other candidates. We got, we'll mention Valerie McCray and also Destiny Wells. I don't see those folks from any representatives here. How about a great big round of applause for Destiny Wells and Valerie McCray? All right. I am here on behalf of Jennifer McCormick. I'm here on behalf of the next governor of the great state of Indiana. So with that, folks, I am Terry Goodin, and I'm the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and I'm proud to be a Hoosier. I am proud to be a Hoosier, folks. And I'll tell you something else. I'm proud to be a rural Hoosier. How about that? So a rural Hoosier, right. So, you know, one thing I like about traveling up into central Indiana and a little bit farther north is you folks have funny accents. So I always like to hear the accents, right, Truce? I always like to hear the accents when I'm out and about traveling around. Hey, Matt Pierce. So as we're traveling around, but folks, you know, the position I was in the last couple of years, I was able to travel around the entire state of Indiana. And unfortunately, when you drove past the McDonald's and the $2 or $3 stores that were in town, the communities inside weren't doing so well. A lot of times it looked like some of those smaller communities or middle-sized cities were just going out of business. And I think you folks know what I mean when I say that. You know, folks, 20 years of one-party rule, 20 years of one-party rule has put Indiana on the wrong track. Extreme wrong track, all right? So as we move forward, all right, we're going to make sure that we get Indiana back on the right track. As a matter of fact, how many people like to read little signs when you drive around, like church signs and all that, right? So here's one thing we want to remember, okay? I was driving up, and when I was coming up, there was a car swerving in front of me, and you know, in the old days, you say, oh, that person must have been drinking. But now you just say, hey, that person's on their telephone, right? So I saw a sign that was pretty fitting, and I like looking at it, and I will never forget it. It says, drive by church, and on that church sign it said, honk if you love Jesus. Text if you want to meet him. Pretty clever there. So let's keep that in mind, folks. Also, as we move forward, I want to say this. 20 years of Republican rule in the State House has created crisis after crisis, folks, and they can't blame these crises on anybody else but themselves. All right? We've got a housing crisis. All right? We've got a housing crisis that's been created by the Republican Party in Indiana. And folks, let me tell you something. In rural Indiana, people live in homes and not houses. And they don't understand that at the State House. As we move forward in the state of Indiana, the McCormick-Goodin ticket is going to fix the housing crisis, and we're going to make homes spring up across the state of Indiana and not just houses. So, with that, folks, I don't have to say any more about the healthcare part of this. Indiana has got a healthcare crisis. All right, we don't have a healthcare problem, Mike Schmuel. We've got a healthcare crisis, and we've got to get this lined out. In a lot of rural counties around the state, a lot of these smaller hospitals are closing down. We've got people that have to drive 65 and 70 miles just to get regular health care. All right, and let me say this: the McCormick-Goodin team is going to stop the war against women in the state of Indiana. We are going to make sure as we move forward, we will push as hard as we can every single day and hour to allow women to make decisions about their own bodies. Folks, need I say more than we've got an educational crisis in the state of Indiana as well? I'm telling you folks, every time that they come out with a great new plan, that spells problems for public schools in our state, all right? So even if you're looking at it through a wide open lens and you say, okay, so they've got their private school stuff or whatever, but listen, here's the deal. If you're going to take state money, you should follow state rules and guidelines. What do you think? Enough of the equality. Let's put everybody on a level playing field, folks. And I will say this. My dad always told me this, and I'm not sure where he heard it, but I'm going to say this. The free public education is the greatest American invention of all time. The free public education is the greatest American invention of all time. And we all know that a better education is the largest rung on the socio-economic ladder. And folks, when I talk about education, I don't just mean college degrees and master's degrees and all that. I'm talking about whatever field you're in or wherever you work, getting a higher level of certification if you're a welder, getting a higher level of a degree if you're in nursing, or whatever that looks like, folks. That's called lifelong learning, and that's where all Hoosiers should be as we move forward in our state. So now I'm going to hit on one last but definitely not least is another crisis that's taking place in our state, and that is the property tax crisis in Indiana. Folks, property taxes are the highest they've been in history, and they're there because one reason, the folks who are in charge are not doing what they need to do to take care of the folks who are not in charge. And it's very simple, folks. All it takes is to sit down at the table, bring everybody to that table, come together with a plan that's going to be fair and equal across the state of Indiana, and we'll get this thing fixed. They won't do that. They won't do that, folks. Let me tell you this right now. My grandfather always said this. He said, Terry, just remember this. If you're not at the table, that means you're probably on the menu. All right? So let me tell you, folks, if you're not at the table, that means you're on the menu. And guess what's happened out here in a lot of Indiana? We've been on the menu, right? So we've got to make sure we have a seat at the table. And we'll tell you this, folks. Every single person will have a seat at the table in a McCormick Goodin ticket. I will tell you right here, right now, that McCormick Goodin ticket and the McCormick Goodin administration will make sure that every single Hoosier is treated with dignity and respect, bar none. Every single person will be treated that way. Now, as we talk about this, okay? As we talk about this, as I said, I've traveled the state of Indiana. I talked to folks. Susan will tell you here, she worked at LSA. I like to talk. So I talk to people. And really, it's a pretty simple recipe what we need to do in Indiana to move our state forward. And these people in Hoosiers will tell you. There's one thing I found out about Indiana and Hoosiers. They're pretty pragmatic people. You know, you give them a problem, they can figure out the answer. Pretty simple, all right? It's just that the politicians have made it too difficult. They make everything too difficult, right? So as I'm traveling around the state of Indiana and I talk to folks, you know, men, women, everyone tells me, Terry, all we want is this. We just want the opportunity to get a good job so we can raise our families with dignity. We want our children to have a brighter future than what we had. We don't want our public officials to embarrass us in front of the entire world. And Terry, we want our elected officials to follow the same rules, guidelines, and laws that all other Hoosiers have to follow. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. You know, folks, I'm going to quote a good friend of mine by the name of Robin Winston, and he said this, and it's true. We're a very pragmatic state in Indiana, and if there's a problem that comes up, we can fix it. As a matter of fact, folks, there's nothing wrong with Indiana. That's what's right with Indiana can't fix. That's right. There's nothing wrong with Indiana. That's what's right with Indiana can't fix. Thank you, Trish. You go ahead and clap about that. That's so, folks, as we move forward, all right, we've got to make sure that we get out and vote. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about voting. We've got to make sure when you folks are out voting, you got to tell people, hey, you may have a friend or a cousin or an uncle that's running for some office on the ballot. You want to vote for them. But don't just go in there and vote straight. ticket. That don't get it, because you're going to vote for a whole lot of people on there that you don't want to vote for. If you're going to go in there and vote, folks, we don't care at the top or wherever. We want you to make sure that you come vote for the Democrat candidates we talk about. We want to vote for the best people that's going to move Indiana forward. And guess what? This year that just happens to be Democrats, right? So make sure we do that. So, but as I'm traveling around down the state, I want to say this. We've been putting in a lot of miles. And by the way, our polling has come back. The miles and the hard work and the dedication from all you folks and everybody else. We're in a dead heat with Mike Braun in the governor's race. So, even more so as we move forward, we're going to continue to put on more miles, buy more tennis shoes, and keep running, all right? But I was in Northeast Indiana the other day, and had been a long day, and I went in and found a little hotel that was out in the middle of nowhere, which is good for me, so I like that. But I went in, kicked my shoes off, brought my feet up, sitting there, and I thought, man, I need something. How many people drink a Mountain Dew or a Big Red before you go to bed? Nobody? Oh, well, come on, surely you do. So I needed a Mountain Dew before I went to bed. So I go down to the lobby and talk to this young man. He's there doing his job, doing a great job. And I said, buddy, I didn't see the pop machines. I call them pop down farther south. I didn't see the pop machines out here. I said, I'd really like to have a Mountain Dew just before I go to bed. And he's like, man, he said, we don't believe in Mountain Dew. I'm like, okay. Fine. You don't believe in Mountain Dew? That's fine. So I turned around and started to walk back to the room thinking, man alive, I just can't go to sleep. How many people got to wind down? I just had to wind down a little bit. Yeah. So I go turn around, go back, and there he is sitting here, and he looked up at me like, okay, what do you want now? I'm like, man, I said, do you have a newspaper around here? I said, it don't have to be a new one. I said, I'll go grab one out of the trash can if you need me to do that. I don't care. I just want to try to catch up with what's going on. And he looked at me and he said, we don't believe in newspapers. I'm like, you don't believe in newspapers? He said, nope. I said, well, let me ask this. When I came in the room, there was a nice TV in there, but how many people can never find the remote control when you go in the hotel room, right? I asked him, I said, hey, I could not find the remote control to turn on the TV. I said, can you tell me where that remote control is so I can turn the TV on? He looked at me with a very stern face and said, we don't believe in TV. By that time, I'm getting a little bit frustrated. I said, man, what do you believe in? He said, we believe in the second coming. I said, brother, let me tell you this. If he's been here once, he sure ain't coming back. So I tell you what, folks, we want to make sure that we do have people come back on the second coming, and one specific individual, but we'll make sure that all gets worked out. But you can't get to the second coming until you get to the first, right? So we're going to make sure we move Indiana in the right direction. We're going to move Indiana forward and not backward. We're going to move Indiana up and not down. We're going to go ahead. We're going to put the word hospitality back in the phrase, who's your hospitality? How about another whoop? All right, there we go. We're going to do that, folks. We're going to get it done. Folks, let me say this as I close. Let me say this. In this election coming up, the choices that you have specifically for the governor's race are very stark. I mean, there's a huge difference in the other side. You've got a team over there that's stuck in the past. They are afraid of the future, and they think that everything is okay in Indiana, and we'll just keep doing the same thing we're doing, that we have done, which economist Michael Hicks and economist Morton Marcus has both said that it's not working. Indiana's not moving the way it should. We're 50th out of 50th, folks. 50th out of 50th in relative economic development in Indiana. Folks, that's first of the worst. All right? You can't get any lower than that. We can do better than that in Indiana, folks. We can do much better. So we've got those folks versus folks who feels like that Indiana's better days are ahead of her, and the McCormick Goodin ticket who feels like that Indiana will move forward. And as we move forward, we're going to bring everybody else along, because my grandfather always told me, son, if you're walking down a path and you see somebody that's fell, you better make sure you stop and help them back up. And that's what we're going to do in Indiana, folks. The Democrat Party, when we see people that are down, we're going to stop and we're going to pick them back up and we're going to get them going on their way. So, folks, in closing, I'm going to say this. As I said before, we want people to vote. You know, we want them to vote straight ticket if they're voting Democrat, right? But I'm going to tell you this, folks. I'm going to tell you this. For a smarter, stronger, safer Indiana, we need to elect Democrats from the White House to the State House to the courthouse, in the halls of Congress, in the halls of Senate, and everywhere in between. Can you folks help me do that? All right. With that, I'm going to close and I'm going to say this. Good luck to all of our candidates here tonight. Good luck. Good luck. We can do this. God bless Indiana, and God bless America. Thank you for listening to me.